What is stitch in the ditch? Well, stitch in the ditch is the method of quilting when you're quilting in the seam lines. And the goal is to kind of make it pretty invisible. That's why you're doing it in the ditch. And it's a great way to stabilize the quilt when you're getting ready to do some free motion quilting. I have some thoughts on how to get this done on the Brother Stellaire. Join me. I'm Cathy. This is Sewing Tech Talk. Let's talk some quilting in the ditch. In the ditch quilting. It's actually a pretty easy way to get some quilting done. Now, depending on the size of your blocks, you know, maybe it's not close enough together to completely put the whole quilt together and keep it together. So if a quilt's going to get some high use and your blocks are 12 inches, you might have to quilt a little bit closer. You can check on the batting that you choose. On the label of the batting, they have the quilting minimum distance apart. You wouldn't want to check that. But it's also a great way to stabilize the quilt when you're getting ready to do, you know, some free motion stitching or just to get everything started. And when I do embroidery on quilting, I kind of have a unique method. Well, maybe it's not unique, it's just my method. Now, why did I come up with this method? Well, I was working at the Houston Quilt Festival once, and they had a meet the winner or meet the contestant or something like that. And I went and I was talking to some, the beautiful quilt artists with some beautiful quilts. And the machine quilting on these quilts was stunning. That's what I was interested in. So I asked them, and more than one told me this, that they stitched in the ditch to stabilize the quilt as invisibly as they could to make sure everything was stable before they went in and did their magnificent artistry. So that's kind of what I do. I'm not saying I'm magnificent artistry, but hey, we all have to start somewhere. So the other thing that I do is I do a lot of embroidered quilts. And how I do that is when I embroider my quilt, I embroider through the quilt top, but I also embroider, I also embroider through the batting. And then I put the backing on and then I quilt it all together. So you can see that maybe this is the process where I'm going to piece my quilt top, do my embroidery through the batting, and then layer it up. Then come in and do your stitch in the ditch to stabilize it before you get wild and crazy. Even if you're going to do machine embroidery quilting, this would be a great way to stabilize the quilt to get ready for that. Because you know you're doing a lot of manipulating and hooping when you're doing that. So let's get down to the basics. I think I have some tricks that you might like. Now, I'm going to be using the dual feed foot. This is a Brother, and the dual feed foot comes with this machine. It looks like this. Now, if you have a previous model, you maybe have one that looks a little bit bigger because this is a brand new compact foot. The other ones were a little bit larger. If you have the other larger version, you can always get the compact version for your machine, if you should so choose. Now, how does it work? The one thing that this compact digital dual feed foot does is it has this band on the bottom. And how the band works, it is in contact with the quilt or the whatever you're stitching. You can actually lift it up and out of the way, but you can have it in contact. And what it does is it pulls that top layer through evenly based on the speed of the feed dogs. It knows that because you plug it in the back. So when you put your foot on, you put the foot on, and if you'll look at the screen, when I plug it in, it knows I have the digital dual feed foot on. There's a little plug in the back, and now the machine's changed over to dual feed. Now the machine knows I have it on there, so it's going to only let me select the stitches I can use with this foot, because it's a pretty smart machine. Now let's talk about how we're going to set up our thread, our needles, and all that kind of fun stuff. Step into my office. So when I like to do stitch in the ditch, I want to make it invisible, right? So thread is a pretty important choice. So I like to use a super micro thread, and this is Quilter Select Para Cotton Poly. It's available at Moore's, of course, and it is an 80 weight thread. Now choosing here's the thicker thread, and here's that super fine thread. You can imagine the super fine thread is really going to blend into that ditch. And I'm going to choose my color based on, well, the value of the thread as well. This is like I'm Goldilocks. This is too dark, this is too light, this is too thick, and either surprisingly this green or this off-white, either one of those is good. Actually, I kind of like the green one a little bit better. It blends in generally with my quilt top. So let's use that one. Now you pick a needle, your quilting needle would be great. This is a 7511. It's a smaller needle because I have a smaller thread. 8012 would work. You could also use a sharp needle. You just want a needle that's going to penetrate all the layers. Now we've picked out our needle, we've picked out our thread. Let's talk about the soul of the process. For that digital dual feed foot, there are different soles. It's a foot, so you can get the soles. Get it? So this is the stitch in the ditch one. You notice how it has a metal like prong coming out because it's going to help me ride right in that ditch. And I'm going to adjust the needle position to find what I like to call the valley of the stitch. Now when you're quilt piecing and you finish, what you generally do, is press the seams to one side. Let's see what that looks like. I've pressed the seams to one side, and that creates a hill and a valley. I want to stitch right here in the valley. So I'm going to have my guide going along there, and I'm going to adjust my needle position so it's right in that valley. Now, fortunately, the Brother Stellaire, it has a large number of needle positions. So when I choose that straight middle stitch, it's going to come up to the middle. But notice I have width positioning so I can move the needle to the left and to the right, and that's at a 1/2 millimeter. Here's a big deal. I can also use my left-right shift to move that 1/4 millimeter, and that's not much bigger than a human hair, or a thread width, or exactly where I need to hit in that ditch. So that's what I'm going to do. When I get everything put on there, I'm going to take it and I'm going to move it exactly where I need to be. Now the good thing also to know about all of these utility stitches on the Brother Stellaire is each one of them has 5 different memory settings. Now the memory setting at the top, let's see what that looks like. When I hit retrieve, you notice I don't have anything set for this stitch, but I can have 5. The one at the top is the one that the stitch is going to come up with when I choose that stitch. So let's set a stitch. What we're going to do is we're going to put our quilt sandwich underneath, thread it up, and see where my needle needs to be so I can memorize that stitch. Threading is pretty simple. Now when I'm using this thread, I can also use it in the bobbin as well. Threading is pretty simple. And now I need to snap on my stitch in the ditch sole for the dual feed foot. Now this is a baby lock foot on a Brother machine with the Brother digital feed. How does that work? Well, a lot of Brother and baby lock machines, let's be quite honest, a lot of them are virtually the same machine when it comes to the physical aspects of the machine. So a lot of the feet fit one or the other. Any attachments generally fit one or the other. But when it comes to the internal parts of the machine, say there's an update for this machine, something that's going to come in here and make it a little bit smarter, that you need to stick to your brand. So I would never, would I ever, use a baby lock update on a Brother machine. and never a brother update on a Baby Lock machine, because inside they have some special things. This Brother Stellaire has a special ability to connect with Scan and Cut through my connection. Baby Lock doesn't play in that sandbox. So inside there are some differences. They're mostly similar. When it comes to feet and attachments, I usually can rock and roll. So now here's my practice sandwich. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up. Now I lifted up the presser foot to get it up into there, but this machine comes with a knee lever that I can use to swipe to the left and right. That's going to raise and lower my presser foot, which is a super convenient feature. Just doesn't work for me on a video, but it's a great feature when I'm just doing regular sewing, and especially quilting. It also has an automatic presser foot lowering device. It's that button right there. Now that's a pretty special button. What that button does is that makes sure that the machine has what's called an automatic sensor system to know exactly how thick my fabric's going to be. Right now, I only have 2 layers, but if I had 3 quilt layers, when the foot lowered and that feature is turned on, I never turn it off. It knows how thick my fabric is and adjusts everything. Now I'm just using that 80-weight thread. There's also another option that maybe you thought of. What about invisible thread? Well, you can use invisible thread, and invisible threads come quite frankly a long way since I started sewing. It used to feel just like fishing line. But invisible thread, and I'm not disrespecting it, because there's lots of really great invisible threads out there now. What's happened now is invisible thread and I don't get along when it comes to doing my machine quilting part. Other people can make it rock and roll. Good for them, but I have an issue with it because it's very thin, it's very stretchy, and it's very strong. And I usually always have to adjust my tension on the machine. This machine has automatic tension. That doesn't mean you might not want to override it for certain things. So I did a little test sew, and it's a pretty nice invisible thread. I hope you can see I had some tension issues, and the thread's kind of shiny. That's kind of why I really don't like to, put the effort I need in to fall in love with it. I just use my 80-weight or another super fine thread. It makes me happy. You might be a little bit different. So do experiment and try, because you might be the invisible thread goddess, if you know what I mean. Now let's set up this needle. Now the needle, what I can do is I can take the needle down. If I want to, I can take the thread out of it, but I'm not going to take a stitch. So I'm going to push this button and put the needle down. And I can see that, well, it's just over to the left side. It's just coming down on that hill of a stitch. You see how this part is raised and this part is lowered? I need to go over, like I said, just a hair. So let's raise that needle and take my shift over maybe a quarter, and I can try that again. Oh, that's in the sweet spot. I'm very happy. Now the hill is on the left side, right? So this works when that hill is on the left side. What if it's on the right side? And in my block, it kind of is. So let's do a trick. So what I'm going to do is stitch 103, and I have stitch 104. They're both straight middle stitches. What's the difference, and why do I have 2? Well, here, do you see the 2 little lines on the top? That means this stitch is going to go in reverse. I don't necessarily use that. So when I hit the reverse button, it's going to go in reverse, and I can set my threads in there. I'm not going to use it when I quilt anyway. This stitch 104 has a little dot at the top. That means when I hit the reverse button and it's going to lock in my threads, it's going to do it in place. I'm not going to use that one really either. So I have these 2 stitches. What am I going to do with them? Well, I'm going to set one up where the hill's on the left, So I chose left 103, and I'm going to make the one on the right 104 for when my hill's on the right. And I can easily switch between the two. Let's do it. So right now I'm happy. I'm going to tell the machine I want to memorize that stitch setting. When I come to 104, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that up for when the hill's on the right. Now my heel's on the right, and the needle is too far to the left. Let's move it the other way. Now I'm happy with it, and I'm going to put that into the memory. Now these memorized stitch settings, you can always just change them out. That's what reset does. It means I've changed my mind. It's a sewer's prerogative. So now, if I'm going to put my needle up, and let's check 103. Check, that's the setting. There's 104, that's the setting. So if they were different, easy peasy. I can just switch it back and forth. Now, let's stitch in the ditch, shall we? Let's put it so that my stitching is on the left. Now on this block, I kind of thought it would be kind of fun to stitch over the other parts of it to kind of get a grid. And I have another suggestion for that. I have what's called an LED guide light. And you can see on the fabric, see how that gives me that guide light so I know where I'm going to go? And it's coming straight off of that stitching line. I could move it over if I wanted to go just a certain distance away and not do in the ditch and just do some echo stitching, but I want it right on my line. Oops. Perfect. Now I can use that as a guide to get my stitching and do my squares, which is not in the ditch. So now I'm going to be stitching, and my guide light's going to show me that I'm coming right into that area. I'm not too concerned yet, but I will be when I get closer to the ditch. Now I'm going to stop and take a breath, and I'm going to tell my machine I'm going to go pretty slow. Now, this is where your inner perfectionist will come out, or it's going to be okay. You can always quilt the way it makes you happy. If I'm really concerned about this, I'm really going to take my time. But I'm pretty darn close as it is, so I can go wherever I want to go. If I want to be really precise, if Houston called and they want me to enter my quilt, I'm going to go real slow and careful. I'm going to go medium slow and careful. Now this is just a practice block. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and stitch over on the hill part. It's going to be painful, but I wanted to show you what that looks like. Why you want to stick into that valley part. So I'm sure you can see the difference. See, when I went on that hill, you can really see it. But check it out. Hey, that's green thread, and you can hardly see it. Pretty sweet, right? Now, if I'm stitching along and my one side, the hill is on one side and another pliant's on the other, all I have to do is pick the stitch that works for me. And I can easily switch between the two. Pretty sweet, right? And the brother Stellaire is going to meet me more than halfway. So thank you for watching me today. You know, stitching in the ditch can be kind of meditative. And if you set it up right, even if you go super slow or medium slow, I think you're going to enjoy it a little bit more when you have a great tool to help you out. Thank you for watching me today. I'm Cathy. This is Sewing Tech Talk. Take it away, George.
Thanks, Cathy. That was an incredible presentation. And so let's go over the special offer we have on the Brother Stellaire series. So we have the XJ2, which is their combination sewing and embroidery, and the XE2, which is dedicated embroidery. They both share the same embroidery features, which is a large 9.5 by 14 inch embroidery area with over 780 built-in embroidery designs, and of them, over 100 of them are Disney. It also has over 30 fonts and large, beautiful monograms. And with the fonts, you can edit in all kinds of arrangements. You can arc, you can array, you can even cut and paste and kern it in some custom ways. Speaking of customization, you can take a design and do an automatic applique around it. And with the matrix copy, you can copy this very quickly to make patches. And if we had the scan and cut, we can actually send it to the scan and cut out those patches, and then embroider them beautifully. An additional advanced technology is a new 2-point laser positioning. I can take something like a name and position it perfectly on a line. I can use it to do multiple hoopings and match them perfectly. I can even use it for edge-to-edge quilting. Now, part of what the Stellaire series offers is a special relationship with the scan and cut. They actually can marry together, so I can send an applique design right from my machine and it will cut it out perfectly for beautiful applique. But better yet, I can send a design from my scan and cut and turn it into embroidery. It also unlocks a new feature where I can choose one of the colors of my design, whether if it's a built-in design, I can choose that and turn it into applique. But let's take that heart that I sent over. I turn it into embroidery. I select the color, and now it's applique. Now let's bring over the third part of the piece. I want to create my own fabric, and I can do that with Print Moda. I took an image of a rose and I arranged it just in a beautiful kaleidoscope of color. And I printed that fabric and placed it on in the scan and cut. I took my design I created on the Stellaire from the scan and cut, sent it over to the scan and cut it out, and I have one complete embroidery design created with that trifecta of creativity. Now the XJ2 also is a sewing machine, and it has a large 11.25 inch opening, beautiful lighting. It has 760 built-in stitches, from quilting stitches to applique to utility. It even has automatic stippling and some beautiful decorative stitches that are very, very wide. It also has an automatic 1/4 inch feature which moves the needle over a 1/4 inch from the foot, and you can use the laser guidance it has on there so you can just do some beautiful piecing. It also has amazing fabric control with an automatic fabric sensor, and this gives you the ability to sense multiple layers like in denim, or if I want to sew on some sheer fabric like this tricot, I can do that beautifully, or even working with elastics. It handles the fabric beautifully. If it's even more extreme, we can add the digital dual feed. This is a belt-driven feed system that gives perfect contact on the fabric. And so you see here with this marine vinyl, there's no slippage. I also can use it with such things as minky, which is hard to sew with, and of course, quilting. For more information on this incredible product, click on the link to see our current special offer. You can email us at customerservice@moores-sew.com or call us at 1-800-865-9664.